pit lane and a brand new circuit for our Michelin Pilot Challenge Chevrolet Detroit Sports Car Classic teams and drivers to take on. The cars, appropriately enough, as we start the build-up to the 100th anniversary of the first running of the Le Mans 24 Hours, are lined up in echelon formation in the middle of the pit lane, as they'll be serviced on both sides, some going to the left and the other half of the field going to the right. Hello everybody, it's a beautiful day. Air temperature around about 84 Fahrenheit. Lovely to have your company. It's been a very, very busy start to the season. No single team and driver have been on the podium more than once this year, and Jeremy Shaw, it has been an absolutely cracking start to the season, with different manufacturers and different teams coming to the fore at the first three races at Sebring and at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca last time out.
Yeah, it's been tremendous. We've had a Ford, a BMW and a Mercedes run at the first three races of the season, but the other manufacturer right there as well, the manufacturer points table is really, really tight, so it's absolutely wide open here. Who can make the least mistakes, I think, is probably going to be the winner today, John.
All live and free, no blocks, no breaks, no subscriptions required. All you have to do is go to IMSA.tv or indeed on to IMSARadio.com and click for the live video wherever you are in the world. It's good to have your company. I know there'll be a lot of people tuning. I was talking to Philippe Albuquerque earlier on. We had dinner with the United crew here at Le Mans, and we are ready to go racing. They're all set up down there waiting to watch this race. Really interested to see how this circuit races, not just how it qualifies. So Jeremy, it's a little bit of a strange starting procedure here. It reminds me rather, and it'll remind some of our viewers and listeners, of the old Mid-Ohio, because they don't start where they finish. They say it's not where you start, it's where you finish. In this position, it's not where you finish, it's where you start, because they're in different places.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They're coming past the finish line at the moment and heading towards turn one. Second time around is when the clock will start for the race, for this 100-minute race, so next time around, but they won't take the green flag at that. The clock will start, then they'll go around to this long back row. It's nearly 3/4 of a mile long, I mean seriously long, and very, very bumpy, and that is where the race will start, but it will finish at the finish line.
Jeremy Shaw and John Hindhoff here in the IMSA broadcast booth, and with IMSA TV and IMSA Radio bringing the biggest sports car audience together around the world, all free for all of the races throughout the season. And a reminder, of course, that our Le Mans build-up on our sister station, Haggerty Radio Le Mans, on 91.2 FM around the track and around the world on RS2 gets underway tomorrow with live and exclusive coverage of the two test sessions at the Circuit de la Sarthe. This is not the old track at Detroit, it's not Belle Isle. This is something entirely different, and it's new for everyone. Bit of a challenge for the suspension engineers and the Michelin tyre engineers as well, with that track temperature up at 133 Fahrenheit. That's over 56 Celsius. Right, let's get ready to go racing. I would normally say at this point, settle back and get yourself comfortable, but in the last couple of races that we have had, things have got very busy very quickly, and with an hour and 40 minutes on the clock, we are ready to get started. Let's see the cars as they line up. It was a cracking pole position yesterday for Cameron Lawrence, his first in 28 starts for Turner Motorsport in the new BMW M4 GT4. It's a Porsche alongside Eric Figueras, who came good right at the end. Then Murillo for Mercedes and Aston Martin for Van der Steur Racing. They're side by side in the sunshine in Michigan on the streets of Detroit as they come to the green flag. We've already started the clock as they went past the start-finish line, or the finish line should I say. We'll go to green halfway down the main straight. Stand by for action. Motor City is about to get noisy with the Chevrolet Detroit Sports Car Classic, and we are off and underway down towards the first corner. It's the first opportunity to make up some positions. Quite a bit of dirt on the circuit, dust being thrown up. Good start by Cameron Lawrence, who turns in with Phil Guerras behind. 1, 2, 3 wide for a moment, and the Nola Sport, one of the Nola Sport cars, I think, going quite wide there, then dropping back in to line. Everybody being rather sensible. There are some gradient changes here, although it is very tight indeed. This is not a dead flat race track. It's not smooth either, Jeremy, but nice to see a few elevation changes in the early part of the lap.
It really is, and great to see so much respect there shown by all the drivers on that opening first few corners. Excellent to see. Hopefully they'll continue for a little while there, but a great start there by Alfredo Nadri in that Ave Motorsports Toyota Caliber 14. He's made up at least 2 or 3 positions, maybe even more than that. He's got past the McLaren that started in 6th, and Nadri took the green flag in the 9th position, so a really good start by the man from the Dominican Republic.
Just the one Toyota GR Supra from Gazoo Racing Latin America in its traditional red, white and black colours. And again, I know that the teammates will be watching in the paddock at the Circuit de la Start. They're getting ready for test day tomorrow with their 2 GR010s, red hot favourites, with a bit of extra weight to take into the weekend tomorrow. Now, big sideways moments, and the car's bouncing through that tight section between turns 5, 6 and 7, and the McLaren got exceptionally sideways. Alex Filsinger for Mia Motorsports in action in the Artura, 7th position, Jeremy. That was a save and a half. That was more than a dab of opposite look.
Man, yeah, he was lucky to get away with that one, wasn't he? But to get away with it, he seems to have done. And, well, great start there by Cameron Lawrence. Already pretty bit of distance between himself and the second place car of Eric Filgueras. The championship leader sorting into third. He'll be thrilled with that. And then Rory van der Steur coming under increasing pressure here from that phase Mercedes. Michael DeMio, a newcomer to this championship in that car number 78. But not a newcomer to racing. He's been out of sport for a year or so. He last drove a GT3 car for Compass Racing, an Acura back in 2020. But he's a former champion in the World Challenge Series, so he knows how to pedal cars.
And Mark Miller, very much involved with that effort, as he's a man from around these parts as well. We'll see how that develops. I had Mark on Midwing Motorsport, our Wednesday show, not so very long ago, and we go back a long way, don't we, with Mark Miller. What a servant to the sport he's been down through the years, and I think there was just enough hints thrown out that we'll perhaps see some more of that number 78 Mercedes-Benz AMG GT4 as the season progresses, and possibly even more than that next year, depending how this tour in the water goes here on this new track. Coming to the end of another lap, and it's Cameron Lawrence who made the break. Very nicely done, across the line. It's 1:18.558, new circuit, so these are new race lap records every time it's broken, and it's been broken by Alex Filsinger. Fast hands Filsingers, we'll be calling him from now on. 1:18.222 for the number 69 Motorsports in action, the Mia McLaren, that's the number 69 car. But at the moment, I feel, Jeremy, we're watching almost like the first couple of rounds of a heavyweight boxing match. There's a bit of sparring going on. Everybody's feeling their way around in these exceptionally hot conditions, with track temperature up over 131 Fahrenheit, 55 degrees Celsius. You talked about the respect earlier on, but also they've got to get these tyres through to whenever they take their pit stop.
Well, that's right, and certainly tyre wear yesterday during practice sessions was very, very low, mainly because the circuit had no grip. It was very dusty. There's been a lot of grinding done on the concrete sections of this racetrack. There's a lot of surface changes between concrete and asphalt and back again. But it was very, very dusty, very, very low adhesion. And because that tyre wear was pretty minimal, so it wouldn't surprise me to see many of the teams opting either to change 2 cut tyres or none at all, conceivably, during this race. So that's something the strategists are going to be, we're going to be keeping an eye on to see how the strategists figure that out.
It is a time certain race, 1 hour 30, call it 34 minutes at the moment, and we've yet to see meaningful moves for position. I get the feeling that it isn't a million miles away, but this has been a good start by Cameron Lawrence. He's pulled out almost 3/4 of a second, a little bit over that. Eric Figueras has taken the fast lap as he went through last time around. They qualified down in the 1:16s for the top half a dozen or so, and now we're running at 1:18s for the best lap last time around. This unusual sight of just the GT4 cars in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge for the Chevrolet Detroit Sports Car Classic, giving these cars the chance to pace themselves without having to worry about any traffic. It will be reciprocated later in the year at Limehouse Park, when we will have a single category race for the TCRs, and that should be a lot of fun around that short bull ring of a circuit. Up to 9/10 of a second now, the lead, and Kenny Murillo now has fastest lap. It seems like everybody in the top 7 or 8, Jeremy, are having a go at taking the fastest lap as the gaps open and close in the top 10 or so.
Yeah, just sort of settling into the pace here, which is really sensible. This is it's respectful but also sensible. I mean, you can end your race here very, very quickly indeed with one little mistake here, and it is hot out there, so getting the tyres up to temperature is difficult. But it's very easy to make a mistake. There's Jason Altsman, who's tracking there right behind Todd Coleman's Archangel Motorsports, green Aston Martins. They head down this long back straightaway, and Altsman already he made up 5 positions on the opening lap, and now trying to make a move on the 14th position that Todd Coleman currently has. There he is down to the inside at turn 3.
That's a lovely drive in the mostly white and blue with the grey Ford Racing stripes. Jensen with his best qualifying effort of the season when the checkered flag dropped yesterday in 3rd position. We often say that Jensen races perhaps a little better than he qualifies. I think he'd be the first to admit that. Well, yesterday he could have cracked that together, but the car was not in technical specification. It was out of conformity. Problem with, I think, the rear wing, Jeremy, wasn't it? And that dropped them all the way to the back.
Yeah, that's right. It was. It didn't meet specifications that it should have done, and so was DQ'd. Yeah, so he's got a lot of work to do in this race. But again, sensible start up into the 14th position now, so already made up 8 positions on the start. So really good early charge here from Jensen, and there's pit stops to come. There's a lot can change during this race, so there's no point in getting too wound up too early.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That it is just about long enough, this race. People will say it's not really an endurance race, but the regulations in terms of drive time make it so that it's not an easy run to the finish. It's not just a case of splitting it in half, although I suppose probably could do something similar to that. And it gives the opportunity for a couple of different strategies. Maybe Jensen has been set out on full attack, maybe slapped him round the face with a bit of raw meat before they put him out there and set him on stun. He's already up, as Jeremy says, up to 14th. He's now got a little bit of a gap before Vin Barletta is his next target, the number 96 in 13th position for Turner Motorsport. Vin's teammate Cameron Lawrence still leading the race by about 0.8 of a second. Nadri going down the inside as he has a battle with that new to the series Thayer's Motorsport, very distinctive with that dark green and gold, and goes wide. Michael DeMeo goes a little bit wide. He's lost about 3 places there, and he's dropping back a little bit. But the main thing there was, Jeremy, that was smart driving by Michael. Yes, he's dropped from 5th position down 2 or 3, but he didn't hit the wall. That was discretion again, being the better part of valour.
Yeah, they're right. If you make one mistake, don't make another. And he didn't. He kept it under control. Now, yes, as you said, lost a couple of positions, but still an hour and a half remaining in this race, so plenty of time to make up for that little slip there. But certainly that Toyota is really charging hard here. The car, they had a problem in the second session of practice yesterday. They were pretty quick in the first one, had some difficulties in the second one, only did a couple of laps. So bounced back well in qualifying to get inside the top 10. And now Alfredo Nadri up into a challenging position here. He's got a bit of ground to make up with that, to catch that group ahead of him, but still in good position. Is that Rory van der Steur?
Down at the far end of the circuit, yes, it is. Just at turn 9 before the entrance to the pit lane, just ran on. It's a really difficult turn 8, should I say, a really difficult braking area there, very bumpy, and again lost some places but lived to fight another day in the blue and white Aston Martin. Would have been easy to try and push your luck there, Jeremy, get round the corner and not make it and have contact with the wall. Good driving, I think, there from Rory, having had a little bit of a problem braking on the bumps.
Yeah, that's right, and that was unfortunate for him, certainly, because he was up there in that battle. He was dropping back a bit from the top 3 and under increasing pressure there from that RB Motorsports Toyota. So yes, it's cost him a lot. He's dropped back down to the 14th position, Rory van der Steur, so he's got a lot of ground now to make up again.
Great battle going on between two very different philosophies of cars which can race together here in the Michelin Pilot Challenge. We use what's called balance of performance, data-driven analysis of the ultimate performance of these cars, and that is then balanced out. You would not normally think that a high-speed hypercar, almost a bespoke car, isn't it, from McLaren, that could race a Toyota Supra, the GR Supra, albeit a highly tuned version of that car, but that's what the balance of performance does for this particular championship. So Najri and Filsing are battling for 4th and 5th position in those two cars. They're about 6 seconds away from the top 3, and Jensen Alsman continues to try to move forward in that number 3 car. He's got ahead of 13 car, he gets ahead of Vin Barletta, and he's pulled out a couple of seconds already. His next target, Tom Collingwood for BGB Motorsports and the number 83 Porsche. He's just a little bit further up the road, about another 2 seconds up the road from Jensen.
Yeah, and they've already put a lap on Ted Giovannis at the back of the field, so the number 64 car already now 1 lap down. 10 laps completed then by our race leader. The last lap time was his best of the race, 1:17.39 for our race leader. That compares to the pole time of 1:16.2. So only a second or so slower than that, and certainly interesting with 10 laps in the books that we're setting your best laps, because generally speaking in this series, the best laps come very early on, but with the different rubber that was laid down previously by the IndyCars, it's a different racetrack to what they raced on yesterday, and it's just getting faster and faster at the moment.
Jeremy Shaw and John Hindhaugh in the IMSA Global Broadcast Centre, live and free. No subscriptions, no sign up, and no interruptions as well. Good to have your company wherever around the world you are. What a busy motorsport weekend here on the streets of Detroit, as well as sports car action tomorrow at Le Mans, which we'll have for you on our sister channel over on RS1 at radiolemans.com. And plenty of eyes from this part of the world watching what's going on the streets of Detroit. I had a note from Marino Franchitti as well, who's been watching the coverage over the weekend, saying this is a circuit that his brother would have loved. Proper old school street circuit. It's not billiard table smooth. Neither is it quite point and squirt either. to be honest, Jeremy. There's a flaw to certain parts of this track which the drivers do seem to enjoy, the challenge of getting that together and getting that rhythm of those parts of the circuit.
You're right, and they're on Jefferson Avenue right now. This is the fastest part of the racecourse they're reaching. Oh, there's a problem, it seems, for Alfredo Nadri. Also, that's Ted Giovanni, I think, keeping out of. Well, I thought he was keeping out of the way, just slipped the wall too. But a problem for the Toyota car number 14 that was running up there in that fourth position. It's slow on the back straight.
Keeping over to driver's right. I'm trying to see maybe a bit of damage on the left-hand front of that car.
Yeah, coming out of turn one there, just ran wide on the exit and clipped that wall. They didn't clip the wall, he hit the wall hard with the left front of that car. He's brought it back into the pit lane, but that's going to be, I think, the end of the day for the number 14 car. Maybe not. He hasn't given up yet, that's for sure. That's certainly a shame for him. He'd got himself up into a challenging position. He was one of the fastest cars on the course, but now it's all gone wrong for the number 14. So Cameron Lawrence leads then by just over a second now from Eric Bergeras in second position. Those two pulled away a little bit now from Kenny Murray, who has set the fastest lap of the race in car number 72, the third place car, 1:17.3. Last time around for our race leader was a 1:17.4, so only fractionally behind in terms of lap time, and still these three leaders are pulling away now from it. It's Alex Filsinger in the MIA McLaren up into fourth position with that problem for Alfredo Nadri. So coming into turn one again, there's a pit stop for number 64, Ted Giovannis. We saw him clip the wall at the extra turn. I think there's a signal from the left front tyre change. I think it's all done for that car, and also number 14 car in the pits with looks like suspension damage there as well. So one car that was running up towards the front, it was again just coming into turn one, just carried a little bit too much speed. Not quite sure whether he clipped the wall on the inside that put him into the outside wall. But yeah, I think he might have done, judging by his trajectory off that corner. I think Nadri might have just clipped that inside wall that pushed him across the road directly into the outside wall. Boy, how many times do we see that on a street circuit? So real disappointment for that team. They've had a whole bunch of strong runs during the last couple of years, but they've had nothing but bad luck this season. They've been fast just about every race. He shares that car, Alfredo Nadri, with Thiago Camilo, who's a very experienced and successful Brazilian stock car racer, but it's all gone wrong for them here in Detroit this afternoon. Cameron Lawrence leads
Jeremy Shaw
laps.
and John Hindhoff. Sorry, Jeremy. In the Global Broadcast Centre, as this race continues to develop on the streets of Detroit, with Alfredo Nadri and Ted Giovannis having to pit after those issues. Alfredo will be kicking himself there. It was the merest brush of the wall, and he'd done a decent lap as well with a 17.8 just before that happened. Fastest lap of the race still to Kenny Murillo with a 17.3, and it's still Cameron Lawrence who has led since the drop of the green flag, 3/4 of a second to the good here, with still an hour and 20 minutes to go, Jeremy.
Yeah, so as you say, a long way to go, and only 20 minutes into this race, so the minimum drive time is really we're over halfway to that lap, because it's only 30 minutes in this race. It's generally 40, but only 30 now. But the second of the team, GGM cars, running well now, with Q Plum at the wheel of car number 46 in the fifth position, and he's not far behind Alex Filsinger's McLaren, and just ahead of Michael DeMeo in the Shays competition by MC Squared Mercedes.
So we are not even anywhere near half distance at the moment.
On board with the Rebel.
When will the tactics start to play out?
So he goes Frank Dupuy around turn one. He's going to be the next car in the sights of the leaders. He's not that far ahead of them. He's heading around turn two and onto the main straightaway. The two leaders, with Eric Falgueras having closed up onto the tail of Cameron Lawrence, looming now in his mirrors, and Kenny Murillo holding a watchy brief there in that third position at the moment. Consistent laps turned by our race leader. 1 minute 17.4 again last time around for Cameron Lawrence in that turn of motorsport BMW caliber 95. And right behind him, Eric Falgueras, who just had his best lap of the race, 1:17.357. Right behind him now, that's the Community Beer Works RS1 Porsche. A bit farther back down the order, Jensen Altzman continuing his charge up through the field. He's now closed up onto the tail of Bryce Ward. He's going to make a pass on the main straightaway, heading down towards turn three. Bryce Ward on the inside, Altzman on the outside. Is the Ford going to go around the outside of him at turn three? Wow, that's a brave move. I don't think he is quite. Bryce is going to try and shut that door at turn four, which he does so. Now it's plunging down the hill, down toward the river, and Altzman has to tuck in behind him. Yes, thank you, Jensen. Smart move. Don't get goaded into trying to make a lunge down there, because it's really a low percentage. Try and move to make a pass. Onto now through the chicane, coming up towards turn 8. This is an overtaking potentially opportunity. And again, Altzman decides discretion the better part of valors. The battle then for 9th and 10th places. Again, super consistent laps by our race leader. Really impressed by Cameron Lawrence. They're all within a tenth of a second. 1 minute 17.440 last time around. His best was at 1:17.393, and all of his laps really touched. The last half dozen have all been in a 1 minute 17.4. So really, really tight job there. A little bit further back on board again with the Jensen Altzman. He got good straightaway speed in that Ford Mustang. The Mustangs have had a little bit of a break in terms of balance performance for this weekend. A slightly larger restrictor than previously, as had the Chevrolet, interestingly. And certainly that was he was able to use that to his benefit, get past Bryce Ward before turn 3, and now Altzman up into 9th position. Next car ahead of him though is about 9 seconds ahead, that being Sean McAllister in a car bound with Peregrine Racing Porsche. 18 laps completed by our leaders. 19.4 that time for Cameron Lawrence. Did he have some lap traffic? I think he might have had some lap traffic to negotiate. I think he got past Frank Dupuy on that lap. And the third place car just reset the fastest lap of the race. That's Kenny Murillo, 1:17.22 for car number 72. But Altzman, he is the man on the charge. Car number 13, 21-year-old from Phoenix, Arizona. Been racing in the Mazda MX-5 Cup. Very successful the last few seasons, and stepping up this year into the GS ranks. Yeah, leaders have passed Frank Dupuy then, so the Chevrolet in 20th position is now at 1 lap down to the leaders. And Kenny Murillo just held up a little bit as he comes past that final corner. get a good run onto the pit straight away, move up into third, or maintain that third position. Cost them a little bit of ground to the race leaders, but not that much, and plenty of time to make that up again. 25 minutes now elapsed in this race. We're only 5 minutes away from the minimum drive time expiring, and we'll see some of the drivers, I think, in at the earliest opportunity, most likely including Frank Depew. That car's already lapped down, so get Robin Liddell behind the wheel of that Chevy Camaro at the earliest opportunity, perhaps somehow claw his way back onto the lead lap.
So Jeremy Shaw with me, John Hindhaugh, in the booth, and I still think there's plenty to talk about here, Jeremy, if I'm honest. This has been, for the most part, a pretty sensible drive by all these teams and drivers, and what I'm seeing here are competitors who want to get to a position where they can start to attack. Got a decent little battle going through 5, 6 and 7 at the moment. The Thayer's Aston Martin, Thayer's competition, sitting in behind Hugh Plum. That's Michael DeMeo in 6th. Hugh Plum for Team TGM in the Aston Martin in 5th, 46 and 78. And those two are the closest battle on the circuit at the moment, with just under half a second between them. Still that consistent 3/4 of a second at the front of the field, Jeremy, between Cameron Lawrence for Turner Motorsport and the new BMW M4 GT4 and the RS1 Porsche in the hands of Eric Filgreas in second.
Indeed so, but Cameron Lawrence just said he's just reset the fastest lap of the race last time around, a 1:16.926 for the pole sitter and race leader. So he's extended that margin back out again to over a second for the first time in several laps, and with the potentially getting close to pit stops for some of these contenders. That's certainly good news for him. He's got quite a few laps now before the catch up to the next group of cars. Two cars have been lapped. One of them is out of the race, that's Ted Chivanis. The other, Frank Depew, in a Rebel Rock Camaro, who's running in the 20th position. But the race leaders now, they've got quite a margin before they're going to catch up with that next little gaggle of cars. There's 3 of them running together. Bob McCallion in the Core Motorsports Ford Mustang car number 59. Then Jeff Mosing, who is the teammates to the third place car of Kenny Moreau. Jeff Mosing running all the way down there, unusually in 17th place. And Anton Diaz-Pereira, who's right with them as well in that car number 27. And then only a little bit behind them, having been passed a couple of laps ago by Diaz-Pereira, is Sean Quinlan in the Stephen Cameron Racing BMW.
It is interesting to see Jeff so far down. He had that incident when he was in qualifying. I think he was up in the top 4 or 5 when he spun the car going on to Franklin out of turn 2. He then had the presence of mind, although red flag did come out. He reversed all the way down into the runoff of turn 2 and then selected first gear and drove away. So the
three-quarters of a mile.
Yes, I know. Dead straight, arrow straight, by the way.
Yeah,
absolutely
job,
outstanding.
Yeah, pretty impressive that was, I must say. It's not easy, a rear wheel steer as it was going backwards.
Yes, exactly. Driving the world's most powerful forklift truck. Yes, absolutely. As he was going down Franklin, but he made a pretty good fist of it, and it meant that we barely lost. I think we only lost about 90 seconds as soon as he was pointing in the right direction and back on the way to the pits. Race control got us back into green flag racing. So coming down to an hour and 10 minutes, this front of the field battle continues to just hold that 2.5 second gap. So 3/4 of a second between first and second, 2.5 seconds between second and third, and that's Kenny Murillo in that number 72 bright orange, chrome orange Mercedes. Then there's a wee bit of a gap back to Alex Vilsinger, who pushed his way through and followed through. It was Alfredo Najri, wasn't it, who had made that break up into the top 4 originally before he clipped the wall. But he's now 8 seconds further back from Kenny Murillo. Alex has got, a second and a half on Hugh Plum, and then Michael's right in behind him in that first competition by MC Squared Mercedes. That's your top 6. BMW, Porsche, Mercedes, McLaren, Aston and Mercedes. So 5 cars in the top 6. And all of a sudden, Jeremy Shaw, Eric Filtreras has found a little bit of pace, or is it Cameron Lawrence just slowing down a bit? Half a second quicker last time around for the car in second.
Yeah, look, I mean, Filgueras, he's just staying in touch with the Turner Motorsport BMW at this stage. He's certainly got a car that's fast enough. But again, Lawrence's last lap time was 1:17.5. The previous lap was 1:17.3, which is his norm. Incredible consistency there. Just 3 laps ago, he turned the fastest lap of the race. Did Cameron Lawrence at 16.9. He's still he's actually not. Alex Filsinger also is in the 16s as well. 16.980 to the 16.926 of Cameron Lawrence. But I think Filgueras at this stage just biding his time. He knows it's going to be awfully difficult to make a pass, so he just wants to keep in touch. You lose it a little bit once in a while, but he seems to be able to gain it back again, John, pretty much at will.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. I'd love to be a fly on the wall of what the teams are talking about on their perches on the pit lane, on the various sides of the pit lane, and what they're discussing at the moment as we come towards the important middle laps. I was just about to say, who's going to jump? Well, at the back of the field, Sean Quinlan has nothing to lose for Stephen Cameron Racing, and the blue and orange number 43 BMW is in for full service. The car is off its jacks. The fuel is still going in. A little bit of a difficulty with the driver. Here comes Frank Depew in the Urban Grid Rebel Rock Racing Camaro. Door opens and Robin Liddell will be getting into that. It's the farewell tour for this Camaro. We've got a Camaro here at Le Mans, of course, the ZL1. We've got 2 of them actually, identical. They went through scrutineering yesterday, and that will be Jimmy Johnson, Mike Rockenfeller and Jenson Button taking on the 24 Hours of Le Mans. It's a beast. I love it. So these are the teams at the back, Jeremy, who have said, right, driver time is up, we've got nothing to lose, let's see what we can do, and we'll see if we can get a little bit of yellow and get to the end from here. 67 minutes though, even on this short circuit. I'm not sure that that's doable without an awful lot of yellow or a splash before the end of the race.
It's not, but nothing to lose there for the Stephen Cameron car. That was on the lead lap. So if Gregory can get out there, they have a good stop for Stephen Cameron Racing, which they generally do. So don't doubt that. And then Gregory can turn some good laps. By the time the other guys make their stops, he can at least be still on the lead lap, and that's where you need to be in case there are any full course cautions. But against the odds, and these guys have done a really nice job at this stage. It's been nice and clean and green so far. Behind the 2 race leaders, it's at number 57, which is now Daniel Morin at the wheel of that car. That's one of the fastest cars in the field, because Daniel was right up at the sharp end in each of the practice sessions, and we know he's fast. So that car is going to be troubling the current race leaders, even though at the moment he's more than a lap down.
Then Barletta comes in from 12th position in the number 96 Turner BMW. Daniel Morad in 18th position, took over from Bryce Ward, and he is coming up behind the 2 leaders. That is not the 3rd place car, so he's looking to get back onto the lead lap, even possibly with the pace he's got in that car at the moment. Last time he went through, it was his out lap of 1:23.3, but that car's got pace, as Jeremy said, and he'll be wondering if he can get past before they pit. He doesn't have to wonder anymore. Eric Filgueras has come in the RS1 Porsche from 2nd position. Now this is really interesting. Still an hour and 5 minutes to go, 65 minutes to go for that green and black number 28. And, well, that is rolling the dice, Jeremy, at this stage from a very strong 2nd position.
It is. I mean, that's gambling on the yellow. I don't think there's any way they can do 65 minutes unless somebody has got their sums wrong. And by that I mean the IMSA technical team, which is very unlikely that anybody could go that long. I mean, it's not a track that is particularly high fuel consumption, I don't think. But I don't think they can do 65 minutes, so I think they are gambling on a bit of yellow here. And I'm surprised that running up front they would take that gamble. The Turner Motorsport, we just saw the sister car of the race leader, the number 96 car, onto pit lane. That's Finn Barletta, who will hand that car over to, who has handed that car over to Robbie Foley, with whom, by the way, Cameron Lawrence, who's leading now in the number 95 car, won Cameron's only race win in this championship was at Sebring in 2020 with Robbie Foley. Wow. Driving together. For this season, of course, he's driving Cameron Lawrence with Robert McGuinness, a young open-wheel driver from New York.
It's made everybody jump. I'm not sure this is the tactics that Will Turner and the Turner Motorsport team wanted to do, but of course, having had that second place car jump into the pit lane, the worry is now if you get caught on the wrong side of a safety car, the top half dozen, in fact the top 7 have still not stopped. So the leader of the cars that have been through the pit lane is the Stephen McAlee driven number 28 RS1. That's the car that he's just taken over from Eric Felgueras. So that has worked for them. They are affecting the front of the race without being there. And we said that Daniel Morad in the blue and black Winwood racing car was quick. He's just put the quickest lap of the race in, and he's challenging the leader who peels off. Cameron Lawrence has been told by the team it's time to come and get out of that car, Jeremy.
Yeah, indeed, and he's Don Salama here, who's the strategist at Turner Motorsports. We never get second guess Don Salama. Same with Joe Vardy. He's the other guy you don't second guess at Team TGM. In terms of strategies, those are two acknowledged as the two aces on this Michelin Pilot Challenge field. But they are. Did they change any tyres on that BMW? I didn't see it either. I think they just checked the tyre pressures, and they're going to send Robert McGuinness on his way. Great stop there by Turner Motorsport.
Wow. Now, well, that's very interesting. Looking down the front straight to see who's coming through. The Turner Motorsport car pops out with an hour and 2.5 minutes to go. Wow, that's going to be tight. That is going to be tight, but they've got out in front of the car they were racing, not by much, but they've kept hold, I think, Jeremy, of that track position. The 95 still ahead of that Porsche as they were before what will be the only scheduled pit stop. So Turner left it as late as they could. Oh, there's a huge incident down at turn 3, and the leader has gone right over the top of the Van der Steur car, and somehow it pulls away but drove right over it. There's smoke, there's damage, there's tyre damage. Oh my goodness, full course yellow. What went wrong there for Robert McGuinness? He knew how important it was down at turn 3, the hairpin at the end of Franklin, and all the hard work by the team is undone in that one moment. They'll have to pit, and they've lost the virtual lead. Pits are closed. Oh my goodness me. And this is bad news for those who have not stopped, although Jensen Holtzman has cycled through, of course, into third position from the back of the field. I've never seen anything like that. The BMW, Jeremy, riding right up over the left rear of the Van der Steur Aston Martin.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's just come out of the pits. The tyres and particularly the brakes. The tyres should be up to temperature, because I don't think he changed tyres. But he just left his braking way too late there, Robert McGuinness, and just ploughs into the side of the Van der Steur Aston Martin. You got to feel for Rory Van der Steur. He had an off earlier on, but he was minding his own business there, and that was really unfortunate for him. Just way too much speed. Not even no lockups there. They have ABS on these cars, but yeah, that was
that's an
not good.
Extraordinary accident. Right front wheel to left rear wheel from the BMW to the Aston. There's a lot of camber on these cars, so it's flicked the car up, and basically the BMW has gone right across the roof of Rory Van der Steur, and it ends up on the top of the tyre barriers, 3/4 of it at least, and still McGuinness managed to drive that car away. And it doesn't matter how many times I look back at it, that's still an extraordinary accident. What it does show, Jeremy, is just how strong the safety precautions are on these cars, because it's gone right across the roof of the Aston, and the safety cell and the roll cage, the scaffolding like bars in the back of that car, have absolutely stood up to that attack by the full weight of a rapidly moving race car. Amazing.
Well, yeah, can you believe it? He carries on as if nothing's happened. I got a feel for Cameron Lawrence. He did a super job in that early stint. Really nice job, super consistent pace, and it's all gone wrong on the first lap out of the pits, and that's just really unfortunate for Cameron. He'll be bitterly disappointed by that one.
Yes, and I mean, there's no two ways about it. That you'd have to say, unless there's been a failure on that car, that was a driver error. They timed it. The tactics were perfect. They wanted to get as close to that hour as they could. They could not have left that car out, I think, even one more lap, because Stephen McAleer was charging so hard, Jeremy, in the RS1 Porsche that he took over from Eric Filgueras, the number 28 car. They got it about right. They had track position, but that pass needed to be made. At least that's clearly what Robert McGuinness thought, and that was just a mistiming down the inside into turn 3. The Aston has come back for Van der Steur Racing, and Rory helped away. Hadn't made his pit stop at that point. Was running longer into the race. He's out of the car. The Aston looks a little bit pre-loved, but it's done its job, and the door opened, even though the driver's door opened, even though it had a BMW right over the top of it. So testament there to the safety measures that are employed by the GT4 cars, the GS cars, here in the Michelin Pilot Challenge, which is under yellow for the Chevrolet Detroit Sports Car Classic here in downtown Detroit on this new track. It's Jeremy Shaw and John Hindhaugh. Stephen McAleer, who that car had made its pit stop with, I think we said it was just over 65 minutes to go. It needed some yellow. It's going to get some now, and whilst the tyre barriers are fixed back up again, Kenny Murillo, Adam Adelson and Jensen Altman, the first three for respectively Murillo, Nola Sport and McCumbee McAleer Racing, had not made their pit stop. Neither had Tom Collingwood for BGB Motorsport and Bob McCallion for Core Motorsport. The pits are closed at the moment, and when they are, I suspect we'll see those cars coming in to the pit lane. It's going to drop them though all the way to the back. Almost the gamble paid off, not quite for those drivers that were going long.
No, this is really bad news for them, for sure. All the guys who've made the stop and stayed on that lead lap are in really good shape right now. And as you say, of those, first place is Stephen McAleer. Second would be Mark Miller in that phase competition.
That's brilliant.
78, the locally based car from based in Birmingham, Michigan, only about 25 minutes here from downtown Detroit. And then next up would be Jesse Lazaire in the Motorsports in Action McLaren.
Yeah, they really timed their pit stops. Look, sometimes I remember saying once to none other than Reinhold Jost, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and he said it's better if you can be both, and they were for many days. Into the pit lane, Kenny Murillo, Adam Adelson, Jensen Altman, Thomas Collingwood and Bob McCallion. So all those cars who had not pitted now get the chance to pit. Now what they will do, and remember some of the cars ahead of them didn't do full 4 tyre pit stops, some of them didn't do any tyres at all. That's a new set of Michelin tyres, 5 studs on most of the cars bar the McLaren, and out that Murillo Racing car has gone. Now how far is that? Yeah, dropped way back down the field. Rejoins at turn 1. Out goes the number 13 Ford. Now Joey Hand is behind the wheel of that car, so that car is not going to be slow. And let's see how it plays out as the clean-up continues down at turn 3. I think it's mainly debris, Jeremy, and perhaps just a little remedial work, because both of the cars remarkably pulled away, and I've actually just seen the Van der Steur Aston Martin drive out of its pit stall and go behind the wall. But it did drive. It had bits hanging off it and various bits of the bodywork at weird angles. No back window where that had been broken, but it drove. It was under its own steam all the way back behind the wall. Remarkable.
Incredible. These cars are pretty stout, aren't they? But what a shame for those two. And there's certainly this caution period helps quite a few people, including those that have gambled on making their stop very early. They should now just about be able to get to the end. It's going to be a long enough caution period, I think, whereby they should be able to get to the end here without needing an additional stop. There's a replay again of that instant. I mean, he was 4 or 5 car lengths back coming into the braking zone. Interesting, there's just no lockup, is there?
No.
So on that BMW, even when the car's in the air, the wheels are all turning. He's not on the brakes there. So it could be that there was some sort of a ABS malfunction there on that BMW. Yeah,
it's a funny one, Jeremy.
Sure. It is. I'm not going to pin all the. I mean, initially it looked like clearly a bad mistake from McGuinness, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt here, because that's a very strange looking incident. He came from so far behind there, and I think he realised that that car wasn't going to stop at all.
I think what you've got to say, Jeremy, is that if, as we said at the time, if it hasn't been a failure, then it was a bit of a mistake from Robert. But he's not that driver. Let's be honest. He'd gone out on warm tyres, and you've got to look at that. He was a long way back. It honestly didn't look like a genuine overtaking attempt, and the more I think about it now, I'm looking at that thinking I expect to hear something from the guys when we get to the end, towards the end of this race. Still under yellow. Have we got back to green here? No, we're just getting hustled around.
The cars have made their
very quickly. Yeah, they're hustling around to get on the back, aren't they?
Yeah. Yep, so there's 4 of the top 5 needed to come into the pits. It was number 72 car, which was Kenny Murillo, and then number 47 car, which was started by Adam Adamson. He's handed that car to Elliot Steer, and Jensen Altsman handed over the number 13 car to Joey Hand. So it's going to be interesting to see what Joey can do. Unfortunately, he's going to be right at the back of the pack. The other car that came in during this caution period was number 83 car, Tom Collingwood, handing up that car, number 83, to Spencer Pompelli, and then car number 59, which is Bob Michelian, with the youngster Luca Mars taking over the wheel at number 59 Ford.
Quick shout out, we mentioned earlier on about Michael Tomeo, who had done a cracking job in qualifying, and how that discretion being the better part of valour and keeping that fierce competition by MC Squared Mercedes off the wall, dropped them 3 or 4 places from 5th, I think, down to 8th. But he kept it on the lead lap, and the upshot of all of that, with some good pit work and some strategy that they felt was working for them, is that Mark Miller's now in 2nd position on that team's debut in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge. Now, did things fall for them? Yes, possibly they did, but they put themselves in that position, and Michael kept that car off the wall early on, when it would have been easy for someone who's been out of racing at this level for a little while, Jeremy, to panic, and that could have been day over for them within the first 8 or 9 laps.
Yeah, but don't forget Michael Demia might be new to this series, but he's not new to racing. Had a lot of success in the past, a former champion in the TC class in the old World Challenge days back in 2016, I think that was. And he's driven GT3 cars as well, very successfully with Comfort Racing, the Acura NSX car. So he's got lots of experience, just not much for the last 18 months or so, when he's been concentrating on his home building business up in the Toronto area of Canada. But very successful driver, very accomplished, and showed it in that first stint. Good, as you say, heads up drive for Michael Demir. And now Mark Miller, who's the only Michigander in the race, from Holland, Michigan. So a home race pretty much for Mark. Super excited to be here, and in that great position as well, running in the second position.
The saying about battles and wars come to mind about what was going on early in the race for Michael, and for one or two others as well, who kept themselves in the fight, including Motorsport in Action for the McLaren Artura GT4. Right there, Daniel Morad with a couple of really quick laps before the the yellow flag came out, including the fastest lap of the race with a 1:16.6 in the Winward Racing. Price Ward did his job as well in that number 57 early on. Don't forget, Jeremy, we've got to award a Michelin moment of the race just for this one class here. They'll get a set of Michelin slick tyres to take to the next round. Compliments of Michelin Racing North America. Could be a tough one here, going through one or two thoughts in my mind about what might be going on. It seems as though we've still got some track vehicles out on the run down from 4 towards 5, 6 and 7. Actually no, it's between 3 and 4, isn't it, on driver's right. So that would have been perhaps some debris down there. Maybe there was a clout on the wall from that incident at turn 3, but still the AMR safety vehicles and the IMSA safety trucks down in that area. So we're burning a bit of time now, well under 50 minutes, 47 minutes and 40 seconds to run here. What this has done, Jeremy, is meant that all those early stoppers have, I would say now, probably no worries about their fuel to get to the end, even the people that stopped at 67 minutes to go.
I think you're right, yes. I agree with you there. The bad news particularly for the Rebel Rock team, is that Robin Liddell is still one lap down, and unfortunately for Gregory Leofouge in number 43 car, and Scott Andrews in a Lone Star Racing car number 27. You remember before that incident he was right behind the effective leaders at that stage, but behind them he was, so therefore is a lap down to everybody else. And even though Scott Andrews now is in second position on the road, that's not his proper position. He and Stephen Cameron right behind him in that orange and blue BMW, those cars running second and third on the road behind our race leader Stephen McAleer. They are a lap down, so they will want to try and get past Stephen McAleer if they can, get back onto the lead lap in case there's another distortion.
At IMSA Radio, we'll have a quick roll action. I've hardly had a chance to have a look at the Twitter here in the IMSA broadcast booth. It's a busy evening, and thank you for all the kind comments, and pretty much a thumbs up from the Twitterati this evening for the new circuit. You know, change is always a little bit difficult sometimes, and this is a very different sort of circuit from what we have been used to here. The delay in going back to green, by the way, there was an awful lot of fluids laid down by the two cars that came together. We saw some oil smoke coming out of the back of the Turner BMW, and also some bits and pieces of debris. So the IMSA safety crew making sure that, as always, it's going to be safe to go back to racing before the green flag is thrown. Extra special care being taken on a street circuit, of course. Looks like the Corvette safety car is just maybe picking up speed a little bit, so we might not be too far away. Looking down towards turn 3, the safety vehicles, one of the safety vehicles has gone, but I think there's still one there, as the yellow flags are still flying. We've still got halfway to go in terms of time in this race, Jeremy, so still plenty of time for those who have the pace and the performance to give this a real go. Yeah,
and it was a great stop by Murillo Racing, because Christian Shimjak who was leading, of course, when the caution came out. He had not stopped before, but he did make a pit stop while the caution was out, and has only lost 5 positions, quite remarkably. So a brilliant stop there for Murillo Racing. They helped a little bit here because the pit lane's actually a little bit shorter than the racetrack, that helped a lot. And I think all of the pack hadn't actually caught up with the race leaders at that stage.
Through that.
When the pits were open. So because a bunch of them had been tracked a lap down by the time of the caution period. So that certainly was a lot more fortunate for that number 72 car that would otherwise have been. And the car that was right behind him on that pit sequence was number 47. He is right behind Shimjak, as was Elliot Skier then at the wheel of the number 47 car. So those two, 72 and the 47, running in 6th and 7th positions in the race, not on the track perhaps, but in the race.
Well, that car came into the pit lane, and let me see, at 54 minutes past the hour and 2 seconds, and Christian Shimchak was credited as going out at 54.54. So that was a 52-second stop, including the driver change. That's pretty toasty in this weather. They've put themselves in a real opportunity. As you said, Jeremy, took the opportunity that was handed to them. Might not have been the exact tactics they were looking for, but with a few gaps in the field, they've got out in a position to give Christian a run to the flag here. And of course, there's a few lap cars. There'll not be a wave by because we don't have another class here. This is how they'll restart, I presume, here.
Absolutely right. Yes, everybody's in the correct positions. You've got several cars a lap down, but they are right. The two of them in particular, two very fast cars, right behind the race leader Stephen McAleer. So he's going to have to have one eye on those two. He won't want to get them. He won't want them back on the lead lap. But at the same time, he knows that in order for him to be challenged by them, they've got to not only get past there and hope for caution, but then pass all the other, we've got 14 cars on the lead lap. So that's a tall order. So if Stephen McAleer feels like he's under threat from Scott Andrews in car number 27, and Scott Andrews was quickest in certainly at least one of the practice sessions. Where's my chance? He was certainly quickest in, he was fastest overall in practice with Scott Andrews. And 1:15.9, by the way, which was faster than the pole time. And Daniel Morad was quickest in the other practice session, in car number 57. So Mercedes is fast around here. We've seen that already. So if Steve McAleer feels like he's not quite as quick or is in danger from that car directly behind him, he should let him go.
Yeah, and they've got to be on the phone to tell him that as well. Scott Andrews is a very good driver in behind the wheel of that Lone Star Racing car. I don't think he'll take too many risks, but obviously,
yes,
quite obviously, what am I saying? He's a racing driver. He's not a dirty driver though, Jeremy, and he wants to. If he's going to make the pass, it's because he wants to take advantage if there's another safety car. And there's no point in being the cause of that safety car because then you won't get the advantage of it. But I think you're right. I think Stephen's got to be told what's going on behind him, and that it's Mark Miller who is the next car that he's actually racing. Daniel Morad I expect to see go forward. He's had the chance to cool down his Michelin tyres just a wee bit and maybe give them a second wind. Still waiting to see if that safety crew working on the fluid have been able to be called away. Down to 40 minutes now. We started with 100 minutes on the clock. So another 5 minutes has slipped away as we head down with the Renaissance Centre right ahead of the drivers as they turn through the far end of the circuit, now down to the waterfront on drivers' right. It's a shame we're losing a little bit of race time here, Jeremy.
Yeah, it is a shame. It really is, because it would have been really interesting to see what had happened there if we'd gone green for another, an extra 10 minutes or so, which was certainly on the cards here. But I think perhaps the track seems to be clear now. Hopefully going to go back to green this time around. And that'll leave us about 39 minutes remaining in the race. Yes, the safety car has pulled off, John.
So now the drivers have got to have their heads back in the game as we go green. It's a pretty decent start from Stephen Michelin in the RS1, the green and black Porsche. But as you suggested, it was a very good restart indeed from Scott Andrews in the Lone Star Racing Mercedes, who is a lap behind. Then it's the Stephen Cameron racing car, the orange and blue car. That's another car that is off the lead lap. Gregory Leofouge in that number 43, and there it is. There's the pass, not for the lead, but to get back on the lead lap. But quite frankly, Jeremy, the team of RS1 have given Stephen all the information he needed. He's still got a decent gap back to the next car, and the next car is still not a car that he's racing. I think that's really smart from the team and from Stephen.
Absolutely right. He kept to the right there. Generally speaking, the car's been keeping to the left on Jefferson Avenue there. It's pretty bumpy right now. There's a good move there by Elliot Skier, fighting his way past Christian Shimjak, the championship leader then. So a good move by Elliot Skier. He got sideways there, coming out of turn, out of the chicane. Kept on the straight now. Just. Oops.
And another move down the inside. Morad goes down the inside of the Motorsport in action. Jesse Lazar driven car, so that's a couple of positions I think that's been lost by the Motorsport in action machine, but quite clearly Daniel Morad, Winwood Racing, he's on the move up to third position, so made up a couple of 3 places in that first racing lap. We know that car is quick, so now it's Porsche, Mercedes, McLaren, Porsche, Mercedes in the top 7. But Stephen McAleer has pulled out 2.4 seconds. Mark Miller trying to clear the traffic as Morad again looks down the inside.
Yeah, and that is a move for second place.
That was a move on Mark Miller for second in the Thayes car. Absolutely. Morad is absolutely target acquired, and he's moved to the head of the chasing group behind Stephen McAleer. What an opening couple of laps for Daniel Morad.
Tremendous restart by Daniel. Fastest of the first session there yesterday morning, so he was the guy who learned this track the quickest, if you like. So we know the car is fast. He was right up in the second session as well with that number 57 car. So he's up into a challenging position now, up into second position, and already I think on this lap he has reduced the deficit by about a half a second to Stephen McAleer. 1:17.7 for Daniel Morad in second place in number 57 Winwood Mercedes to 1:18.4 for Stephen McAleer, so 3/4 of a second faster.
Jesse Lazare is not up to speed in the Motorsport in action McLaren. Christian Spinchak from Murillo Racing in the bright orange car, 72 has just gone through, so that's at least 3 or 4 cars. And now again, it's not quick down the straight either in Joey Hunt from Macumbi McAleer Racing in the Ford Mustang that he took over from Jensen Altman. Remember, that car started dead last after the infringement in qualifying. 3 across the track at turn 3, and my goodness me, that was a bit leery for a moment. Scott Andrews, Gregory Leofouge, Robin Liddell, all involved in that. And one of the Turner Motorsports cars, that must have been Robbie Foley that was in there as well. Yes, it was Accelerating Performance with the Michael Cooper driven Aston Martin with a distinctive green and yellow front to that car also involved. Now, the Mir McLaren has damage on the right hand side, and the very brightly coloured door mirror is hanging loose, so there's been a bit of contact there. I wonder if that's knocked something out of true for Jesse Lazare, Jeremy, and he's now dropped down to 10th position.
Yes, he has, and Luca Mars is on a bit of a charge as well in the second of the Fords, car number 59. He's ahead of the car with which we ride now, which is Robbie Foley. So he's Luca Mars, the youngster, just 17 years of age from Pennsylvania, He's getting a move on here. That Ford has they had all sorts of problems in the first 2 practice sessions. They had problems with the ABS system. They had problems with the differential overheating dramatically. But hopefully they've got those problems solved. And he's certainly running and showing good speed now.
And a full second taken out of the leader by Daniel Morad in the number 57 Winward Racing Mercedes against Stephen McNamara in the RS1 Porsche. Now, what I can't tell you very easily is what the tactics were at the pit stop for the RS1 and whether they took tyres when Eric Figueras got out of that car. And it's not even a second anymore. It's down to 0.3 of a second at the front of the field as the leaders are coming onto that long straight of Franklin. Lapped car ahead still is Scott Andrews, who's pulled away just a little bit from the lead battle, but it is on at the front of the field, in the slipstream, in the draft. Daniel Morad looming up large in the mirrors of the RS1 Porsche as they go down towards that tricky braking area at turn 3, drifting across to the right hand side of the track. Morad takes an even wider line to try and square the corner off and get them onto the power in the BMW as best as he can. Mark Miller, another 1.5 seconds further back, has got a little bit of breathing space in the fierce competition machine from Jess Westwell in the car bound by Peregrine Porsche at 1.5 seconds between those two. But the leaders at the moment have let battle commence, Jeremy, and with just over half an hour to go, this is a race to the finish and a fight on the streets. Get your elbows out and do what you need to do down the inside at the final corner. My goodness me, that would have been an audacious manoeuvre from Morad. They cross the stripe, complete another lap and go down to turn 1, and again Morad looks down the inside, gets up on the quarter panel. That's very tight indeed. They're side by side on the short chute between 1 and 2, and Morad goes through. Excellent driving by both. Here comes Mark Miller in the 78, the Thays car. He's right there too. He's got a great run down the long straight. All of a sudden it's all come together at the front of the field. Excellent driving, great respect, great skill, phenomenal racing.
Yeah, that was a bold move there down the inside at turn 1. There's not many passes being hit at turn 1, and Stephen McAleer was wise enough to give him enough space to make that pass. There's no contact between either of them, so really good driving between those two. But Daniel Morad, he's on a mission here right now in that Winward Racing Mercedes. They've had good pace in each of the races so far this season, but no results to show for it.
Oh, it was just outstanding. There was perhaps an opportunity coming onto the start straight. He's about 1/4 and then 1/2, but he's got up the inside, and I think also the problem there for Stephen McAleer was he was on the dirty part of the track. It could have been an absolute disaster for both of them. There's no touch there, right up on the curb on the left hand side by the 57 Winward car at turn 1, and by the time they got through to turn number 2, the pass was all done and dusted, and Mark Miller wanting a bit of that as well. And in fact, Stephen McAleer, who is having to defend, just moving about under braking a little bit. Behind them is the car bomb with Peregrine Porsche, so Mercedes from Porsche, and Porsche with Elliott Skier not too far behind, only another second back. And what do we know about anything on racing tracks, particularly on tight circuits? If you start to fight, you will start to slow yourself down, and here comes Elliott Skier in that bright yellow Nola Sports car. The battle for second is about to go from 2 to 3 and then 3 to 4 cars, with Daniel Morad just starting to put a little bit of a gap, a little bit of a breathing space into that battle for the remaining 2 steps on the box. Jeremy Shaw, this is quality stuff.
Yeah, good racing, isn't it? And still just about half an hour remaining in this race, so plenty more action, I think, still to come. The fastest man on the track, though, is Scott Andrews in that cut number 27 Lone Star Mercedes. He's the guy that got past the race leader. He's pulled away, not a lot, he's pulled away a little bit. He's got the fastest lap of the race now, down to 1 minute 15 with 8:79. That is the fastest lap of the weekend so far by Scott Andrews, the Australia driver based these days in Miami. But behind him, it's the other Mercedes of Daniel Morad that leads. Stephen McAleer is still hanging on there in that second position, just ahead of Mark Miller and Jeff Westphal, and only a second or so behind them is Elliot Skier, who's closing up in that Nola Sport Porsche, and Christian Schimjack, the championship leader,
Yes.
in 6th position as well.
Christian Schimjack can see a wheelbarrow full of points just ahead of him. He's a second away from essentially being on the back of the battle for second position, and this is going to be a fabulous drive for that 72 car if they can get through to make some more points. Now, can he close the gap? Maybe he can. How aggressive is he going to be with the championship lead on the line? But I've got to say, I'm hugely impressed by what Daniel Morad has done before and after the cessation of hostilities for that longish yellow flag period. He is now pulling away. He's not just over 1 second ahead, he's over 2 seconds ahead of this battle, and that's because Stephen McAleer, remember, we're not sure what happened with the tyres, and it's been super hot on the track. Temperatures up over 50 Celsius, well into the late 20s, early 30s Fahrenheit. It's dropped back to merely 46 Celsius or 115 Fahrenheit at the moment. I get the feeling that Stephen McAleer here, Jeremy, is now fighting a little bit of a rearguard action to try and keep these guys back as long as he can, and that might not be long enough because Mark Miller looks like he's got performance to spare in that Thayer's competition by MC Squared Mercedes AMG.
Yeah, it's been a while since Mark has driven a GT4 car, but he's done a nice job here, taking over from Michael DeMeo, who drove an excellent first stint in that brand new team here. Boy, has that team showed that it belongs at the top level in the Michelin Pilot Challenge, because Mark Miller now is really putting the pressure onto Stephen McAleer as they head down into turn 8 and 9, last couple of corners on this lap. And it's nothing to choose between those two.
Here we go. Miller takes the wide line onto the front straight, to the finish straight, if you will. Can he pull the same move as Morad? He saw what happened. He doesn't get the overlap into turn 1 though. Almost had it into turn 9. Now, what's the exit of turn 2 going to be like? Oh, it's maybe a little bit of understeer, but Mark squared it off again, and he's right under the rear wing of that little Porsche. That Mercedes looks much bigger. Front-engine car, remember, against the mid-engined Porsche. Miller goes to driver's right, shows the front of the car. But he's not in position there, but he's forcing the second-place car to go defensive and now dives down the inside. Fantastic manoeuvre from Miller if he pulls this one off through the dummy to the right. Cut back to the left, but Stephen McAleer has covered it through turn 4. Down the hill to turn 5 now. This is brilliant stuff. Best seat in the house for Jeff Westphal and Elliot Skier, because they're watching two absolute masters of their craft going at it hammer and tongs, and Christian Schimjack is only a further second behind. You know, Eric Voss, he's got 6 seconds to get onto these guys, but he's just put his fastest lap in because he's in a little bit of clear air. And every lap, every corner that Stephen McAleer is defending is absolute music to the ears of Windward Racing and Daniel Morad, now nearly 4 seconds ahead of this quality battle for second place.
Yeah, and Eric Foss in that car number 56, he took the restart in 14th position. He's now up to 7th. So he is charging the second of those Murillo Mercedes. As you say, he's got a bit of a gap now to catch up with Christian Schimjack, who is leading the championship, of course. And this, the tail end of this lead pack, he'd be exactly where he wants to be for Schimjack right now. He pulled off a brilliant pass to win the race last time out on the West Coast at Willetton Raceway in Laguna Seca. But right now he's exactly where he wants to be, in touch with the leaders, picking up good championship points.
Yeah, he's there. That 1 second has become half a second, and now it's not even that. He's about 4 or 5 cars lengths off the back of the Nola Sport Porsche ahead of him for Elliot Skier. Now 25 minutes to go. You don't have to go now. You don't have to push right away. What is the tactics for Schimjack at the front of the championship battle, and sitting at the moment as he is down in 6th position? All of a sudden, just a little gap opening up between the Stephen McAleer and Mark Miller battle and Jeff Westphal. Let's see if he can close that one down. Further back down the field, coming into the final corner, Robbie Foley and Michael Cooper battling over 10th position. and that was again a very strong move by Foley to get right up the inside of the accelerating performance Aston Martin.
Yeah, Daniel Moore is pulling way at the front, but all sorts of battles farther back down the field. Joey Handa, he's really struggling in that forward. Spencer Campelli has passed him now. Eric Foster passed him only 3 or 4 laps ago. He's just left him for dead. 2 or 3 laps ago, he's left him absolutely for dead there. Clearly, that number 13 Ford is not as fast as it needs to be right now.
Elliott Skier going up the inside of Jeff Westphal for 4th position at turn 3, and Christian Simchak tried to follow him through but got on the wrong side, the left hand side, coming down to turn 4. The championship leader backed out of that one. That was a smart move by him, but that's Skier through up into 4th position. Daniel Morad for Winwood Racing by 4 seconds. Stephen McAleer and Mark Miller battling away 3/4 of a second ahead of Elliott Skier, making that a second now ahead of Elliott Skier now that he's cleared though Jeff Westphal. Let's see how quickly that gap comes down. Foley did get ahead of Michael Cooper for 10th place. Joey Hand is about another 3/4 of a second or so up the road from that in the battle for 9th, 10th, 11th. And Luca Mars is right in there, and he's Matt Plum actually. Well, he's about another second further back. Jesse Lazaire for that Motorsport in Action McLaren Artura. That has not had the pace since the restart. Very interesting. Now, battle for the lead. Down at turn 2. And there is Mark Miller. Excuse me, that's battle for 2nd position. Miller gets the overlap, tries to go around the outside. He can't do that and gets a little clip. That could have put him into the wall. Oh, come on, Mark, you know better than that. Stephen McAleer is putting you exactly where he wants you, and that is in the dirt coming in to turn number 4.
Yeah, good driving there by the 2nd place car, Stephen McAleer. We saw a pass there during the Indy Lights race, by the way, around the outside of turn 3, all the way around the outside, and held on. He just had a wheel inside for the right-hander that follows. He was able to make that pass. It's a brilliant move. So it is possible, even amazingly, an open wheel car. But it's good racing here for the 2nd position at the moment.
Looks to me as though the Mercedes has an advantage through the twistier parts of the circuit and under braking, but just can't get the power down. Miller gets a good run out onto Franklin down the bumpy surface down towards turn number 3. It's a hairpin, but it's almost like 2 corners in some respects, a double apex hairpin if you will, because it's quite open, quite wide. Now let's see what Mark can do here. He's right on the rear bumper of the Porsche, but again gets held up in the middle of the corner. That's smart driving by Stephen McAleer. He's basically blocking and possibly even slowing down in the middle of the corner, because he doesn't want Mark Miller to take the momentum through the centre of the corner. Elliott Skier has established himself now in 4th position ahead of Jeff Westphal. That's the yellow and white Nola Sport Porsche ahead of the bright orange, the grey Westphal driven carbon, then the bright orange Murillo Mercedes of Christian Simchak just on the end of that. Then there's a little bit of a gap. Now remember, it's not that long ago, is it 2 or 3 laps ago, that I said there was a 6-second gap between the 2 Murillo racing cars? It's 2.6 seconds now. That is what happens when you're driving defensively. Stephen McAleer is doing that. He's breaking no rules. He's doing absolutely the right thing. And on a street circuit like this, Jeremy, just putting your car half a car's width one way, 3/4 of a car's width the other, it's not the optimum racing line. So you're slowing your lap time down, but you're making it super difficult for the guys behind to get a proper overtaking opportunity.
That's exactly right. And meanwhile, Daniel Morad, he's just 3 times in the last half dozen laps has reset his personal best fastest lap in the race. He's now comfortable 5 seconds clear of this tremendous battle for 2nd position that Stephen McAleer has at the moment. And Mark Miller now, right now, he seems to be, I think, probably more concentrated not on trying to make the pass for 2nd, but on maintaining 3rd ahead of a charging Elliott Skier in that Nola Sport Porsche car number 47.
An amazing run, and you've got to wonder when the advantage perhaps that Mark Miller had on tyres is going to go away, because sitting behind in the warm air on a hot track with the aerodynamics not working. He's working his Michelin tyres more and more. It's now 3 that have pulled away. Oh, not a good run out of turn number 2 for Mark Miller. He's very close to the wall. It gets a bit dusty out there, and all of a sudden Stephen McAleer has got 5, 6, 7, 8 cars lengths on the Mercedes, but that little 3-car battle for 2nd, 3rd, 4th has just pulled away from the Jeff Westphal and Christian Simchak, and their forces looming up on them. Now just on 2 seconds between them. The leader, 5 seconds to the good. What a drive by Morad. Before, and look, I know you'll be thinking, yeah, well, you know, he had it lucky. He got the safety car when he needed it. Yes, he did in some respects. But Jeremy, before that safety car, he was setting fastest laps of the race. He was on a charge even before the safety car came out. And since then, he's managed, one of the few actually, who's managed to keep up the same pace or better it when the safety car pulled off.
Yeah, good point. And it's certainly interesting to see how this race has kind of fluctuated. We're on board here with Joey Hand, I think, at the moment. And having made the pass a few laps ago, Spencer Capelli in that Brighton. Spencer Capelli, isn't it?
It is indeed the BGB car, bright yellow.
He's not pulling away, surprisingly. He was initially, but now he's not. In fact, Joey Hand has closed back in again on that BGB Porsche. Meanwhile, by the way, Scott Andrews has reset fastest lap a couple of times in the last few laps. 1:15.3 last time around for Scott Andrews. That time at 27. It's all going to be for naught unless there's another caution. But it's a tremendous performance by the Aussie.
43 seconds away from his next number. At 32, that's how quick he's going at the ball. 32 seconds away from Matt Plum, who is in 14th position. That's quicker than qualifying, Jeremy, isn't it? That's 15.3, so that's got to be the quickest. The last couple must have been the quickest lap of the week we've seen so far.
It's a full second faster than qualifying, and in qualifying it didn't go as fast as it had done in practice, as Scott Andrews had done in practice. He did a 15.9 in practice with Andrews, and the qualifying session was held just after the IndyCars, and I think that the Michelin rubber didn't react terribly well. I think quite a few people were struggling during the qualifying session to really get the optimum pace out of their cars, but now, with all this Michelin rubber laid down during this race so far, it's really coming to these guys, and the speeds are just getting faster and faster. We've seen 3 guys there, Elliott Skier, Jeff Westphal and Christian Simchak, all turned their best laps last time around, 57 laps in the books.
If you're unsure about what Jeremy's talking about there's 2 different ways that tyres give grip to racing cars, slick racing tyres. One of them is obviously the contact patch itself and how that interacts with the track surface and the suspension of the car, and how well you are making use of that in terms of the compound of the tyre and the forward progress through the corners. The other is actually a chemical reaction, and it's called chemical grip. Now, I am nowhere near proficient enough to tell you exactly how all of that works, but I know that it does work. And what happens when you get different tyre companies at the same racetrack, then that chemical part of the grip coefficient, if you will, gets affected by having somebody else's rubber there, because your tyres, they're not actually reacting to the track, it's reacting to what's on the surface of the track. And there are places here that you can see quite clearly with a darker racing line. Oh, problem for the Nola Sport car. Problem for the Nola Sport of Elliott Skier, excuse me. That was 4th position. Jeff Westphal just driven through. Now, was that a clip of the wall coming out of turn 2? There's something not right with the yellow, white and black car, and that has cost him a huge amount of time. Just seemed to slow there, and it would be right hand side if he clipped the wall coming out of turn number 2. And that car is struggling, Jeremy, just not up to pace at all.
No, he's dropped a lot of ground here. I wonder whether Spencer Capelli might have had a similar problem with the 83 car that's necked back down the racetrack, because he's losing ground at least for half a second a lap to the other contenders, and that's unusual for Spencer because we know how fast he is.
Down into the last 15 minutes of this race, and what a cracker it has been. We likened it earlier on to a bit of sparring at the beginning of a World Championship heavyweight fight. Well, they're all throwing their haymakers now, coming into the last couple of rounds to possibly flog the analogy a little bit too far, to be quite honest. That has been a real issue for Nola Sport. Did not pit though, so he must think that there's something he can do to affect that. The 47 car of Elliott Skier has dropped down to 7th position and dropped a good 6 seconds, I would think, to the battle that he was in before that. The leader, by the way, Daniel Morad, has just eased his pace a tiny bit the last couple of laps, and his lead has come down a wee bit, but still a very healthy 4.2 seconds. Stephen McAleer with a second now on Mark Miller, who put his and the Thayer's competition by MC Squared Mercedes best lap in last time around, and Stephen McAleer responds to that, and Mark Miller responds to that, and there's a lot of light colours on the timing screen now, which means even without looking at the numbers, Jeremy, we know that people are still finding performance here in the last 13 and a half minutes of the Chevrolet Detroit Sports Car Classic.
Really interesting, isn't it? And the two Murillo Mercedes are now together again. Eric Foss has caught Christian Schimjak, so they are right behind Jeff Westphal in the car barn with Peregrine Racing Porsche. It's the battle then for 4th, 5th and 6th.
And that is the championship leader, Christian Schimjak, who it seems not so very long ago we were talking about being outside the top 10, then he's made his way up to about 8th, and then there was a couple of kerfuffles and skirmishes around him, and he was onto the battle for 2nd place, and now he's up into 5th with that slowing Nola Sport Elliott Skier car. Elliott Skier's got back up to speed. He did a 16.4 last time around. His best lap is a 16.3, so something very strange going on with that number 47 Porsche, Jeremy.
Yeah, that is odd, isn't it? And that's certainly good news. The bad news is he's 3 seconds behind that group of cars with which he was battling. A little further back, he's hanging off Joey Hand's Mustang on the side of it there, but he still managed just about to stay ahead of Robbie Foley, and the two of them are tracking close behind Spencer Pimpelli, who his last time around was a 17.0, which again is not too bad. But Joey Hand actually just said his best lap of the race, 1 minute 16.7 on that last lap.
Well, there's going to be some people in the Windward pit who are biting their nails at the moment, waiting for this clock. When you're leading, the clock seems to go very slowly. When you're chasing, it looks like it's double time. Well, at the moment, the Windward crew are urging on their driver, Daniel Morad. Bryce Ward, who did his job at the start of the race, stayed out of trouble and gave the car over to his teammate in a position and in a state that Daniel Morad could immediately start setting some very fast times. It was early, yes it was, and they knew that they would need help from a safety car period, and when that came, my goodness, he doubled down on the pace that he had shown before that yellow came out, and he's carved his way through to the lead. Yes, he got a little bit lucky, and the team got a little bit lucky on that safety car, but you cannot fault the aggression and the absolutely outstanding, clean, decisive overtaking manoeuvres that have been made by Daniel Morad in that Windward Racing car, Jeremy, to get him to the front of the field. It's been a cracking drive.
It certainly has. The other Mercedes was going really fast. That Lone Star Racing car number 27, Scott Andrews, was on the tail of the lead lap there. He's not any longer. He's brought that car into the pit lane. That car has now been retired, so some sort of problem there for number 27, having set comfortably the fastest lap of the race of 115.3.
Yeah, they were going to get a penalty anyway because they were turning their wheels. The wheels were rotating whilst it was elevated. But as you say, that won't now be served. The car has gone behind the wall. That's a shame. Scott Andrews showing real pace there for Lone Star Racing. 1:15.3 is the fastest GT4 GS time we've seen in this meeting.
And the two Murillo cars will exchange positions. It's now the car with the black middle, if you like, as opposed to the blue middle section of the car. Christian Schimjack. So Eric Post now ahead of Schimjack for what is now 5th position.
Little kiss on the wall for the number 88 Aston. Just a moment or two ago, Patrick Lindsay for Archangel Motorsport finding the absolute limit of the circuit. Just got away with that. They had to serve a penalty earlier on as well, which dropped them a wee bit further down than I think they'd like to be. Those two Murillo cars are now ganging up on Jeff Westfall. It's number 39 Carbon, the grey and green Porsche, and he has behind him two very hungry looking Murillo Racing Mercedes. Eric Voss ahead of Christian Schimjack. Interesting that Voss went through. It is an internecine battle between those two, with Schimjack leading the championship, but ultimately I suppose at this relatively early stage of the season, Jeremy, it's still every team and every driver for themselves.
Yeah, true that. Last year Eric Voss finished second in the championship, and this year currently he's running in the 6th position in the championship and only 160 behind their teammates, so they're still very much in contention. And he was actually tied on points with Elliot Skier and Adam Adamson. So 5th and 6th were tied on 600 points coming into this weekend. But now Eric Voss is a couple of positions ahead of that Nola Sport Porsche.
Jeremy Shaw and John Hindhaugh as we head inside the last 10 minutes, live from the IMSA Global Broadcast Centre, with coverage for you in sound and vision of the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge Chevrolet Detroit Sports Car Classic. And still this battle continues. How long has Mark Miller now been sitting behind that number 28 RS1? He will know every single piece of livery, every nut and bolt. We can probably see the part number on the back of that Porsche's rear wing there ahead of him. He's tried a couple of times, but we've not seen anything particularly aggressive from Mark for a little while now. Certainly nothing concerted. Sits in though close enough to make sure that Stephen McAleer cannot rest. A single mistake, missing a braking point by just half a car's length, and Mark is there to pick up the pieces. The concentration by both of these drivers being shown here, Jeremy, is absolutely exemplary.
It is, isn't it? And both of those two have set their fastest laps just in the last few laps too. So this battle is second place position certainly heating up here. And they pulled away now from Jeff Westphal, who set his best lap on the last lap around as well. 1 minute 15.8 to car number 39, the Carbon Recurring Racing black and green car, just ahead of Eric Voss in the bronze and black and white Murillo Racing Mercedes.
Those cars are leaning so hard on the white rear Michelin as they come through 5, 6 and 7. It's really getting a hard ride. Now the Nola Sport car, whatever was ailing it, Elliot Skier earlier on, hello, it's a self-fixing car, because that never happens. Going down into turn 1, he's putting pressure on championship leader Christian Schimjack and forces Schimjack to go very defensively into turn 1, and it's a cut-back move down the inside into turn 2. That's a classic, and it's done in the best way possible. Plenty of room left between the two cars, and whatever it was that was ailing Elliot Skier's Nola Sport isn't anymore. He's gone through. That's a position gain back into the top 6 for the Nola Sport Porsche number 47. Brilliant manoeuvre.
Really was, and that's exactly what he needed at that stage. He needs, it's very close in points Kenny Murillo and Christian Shimjak in number 72 car. They had a pretty handy lead coming into this weekend. They had a 90-point lead over Robbie Foley and Vin Barletta, who were second in the points table. They're driving number 96 BMW. It's currently now down in the 9th position. But every point counts. And this battle for second place is still very much on between Stephen McAleer and Mark Miller. Almost
under 5 minutes,
matching their fastest laps of the race.
Incredible that the drivers, the cars, and the Michelin tyres are on this street circuit where the temperature remains in triple digits Fahrenheit, 109, and that is the chilliest that we've had, the least warm that we've had here. That's 43 Fahrenheit. Air temperature stayed around about the same, 28, 29 since the start of the race, but we are getting, of course, because we're on a downtown track, we are getting the shadows coming across the track now from the taller buildings here. Oh, little mistake by the number 39, and that's Jeff Westphal and Carbon going a touch wide at turn 3. Just got off kilter with his braking on the bumps, and is this the opportunity for Eric Voss? There was for a moment, but my goodness, what a smart, unfussed, unpanicked piece of driving there from Jeff Westphal, Jeremy, to regain his composure and put the car exactly where Eric Voss didn't want it to be.
Yeah, that's right. Oops, is that the bit that fell off Joey Hand's car, I think, and being collected by a whole bunch of cars running a little bit farther back down the pack. That's unfortunately a big piece of debris. I think it must have been off the Ford, because it was hanging off earlier on. But
yeah,
I wonder if there's a problem. I was going to say, I wonder if there's a problem for Christian Shimjak, because he was slowing quite dramatically compared to everybody else. Having said that, he's just said his best lap of the race in car number 72. That's bizarre.
I'm going to be intrigued to hear what the drivers have got to say and what we can read on IMSA.com and the socials and the websites from the team about how the drivers have described this, because it's been really tough to call who's had the advantage. A little bit of a love tap there as the battle for second, Stephen McAleer and Mark Miller. Mark throwing the dummy again, going one way and then cutting back, and Stephen covering that down the inside. I think that was all right. Stephen made the one move to defend. Oh, Mark Miller washes out through turn number 4 and into 5, 6 and 7 now, and just the front end of that Mercedes maybe looking a little less planted than it was. We knew the tyres would start to go away, but my goodness, they've held up really well. Michelin moment of the race, Jeremy. Some worthy contenders here. What's caught your eye? And the stories perhaps haven't even finished being written at the moment, but where do you think that set of Michelin tyres should be going?
I don't know. I mean, what a debut by Thay's competition.
Yes.
By M2 Squared. They've done a super job all the way through for their first time at this level. Really, hats off to that entire team there. They've been absolutely superb throughout this race, and running right there in contention still to Faisal Ahmad there, who's the team principal there, and the race engineer is Grant Barkley. They've just done a great job all the way through this event. I tell you what though, I wonder whether some of these guys were struggling on fuel, whether that was a problem for number 72 car, because yes, it was a lengthy caution period, but it certainly came in very early. I think we're going to have this lap and one more to the checkered flag.
Well, I'm going to go with you, Jeremy. I was going to mention the first competition by MC Squared, and I think, Mark Miller, we know how good. The white flag is out, actually. White flag is out, so let's get this done quickly.
Yeah.
Mark Miller, we assume it always to be very good, but I think that opening stint, you were right, Jeremy. The experience shown in that early stint shows that a little bit of time away from this style of racing has done like to me no harm whatsoever, and that will be our Michelin moment of the race. It kept them in it, he didn't lose his cool, and Mark Miller is fighting for second position in their first outing in a very competitive field. of the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge. There's also a good battle going on behind between Jeff Westphal and Eric Voss as well for 4th and 5th position. It's going to be Daniel Morad and Winward Racing, and congratulations to them. Morad has driven superbly both before and after the interruption for that nasty looking incident down at turn 3 when the accelerating performance Aston Martin was attacked by the Turner Motorsport BMW and went right over the roof. But here's the win that Bryce Ward has been waiting for. He keeps telling us he's going to retire. There'll be no thoughts of that now, as through comes Morad to win. And the team, what a team. It's a big family down there. They'll take that one. Winward Racing win at the end. Daniel Morad easing his pace, but still winning by 2.4 seconds. What a defensive drive in the second half of the race, Jeremy, by RS1 Stephen McAleer to bring that car home in second, and a maiden podium on their debut for Mark Miller and the rest of the Thayer's competition by MC Squared. You mentioned he's the only Michigan native in the race. This one is going to be very emotional for Mark and the rest of the team. What a cracking race, particularly that second half. And can we just say, everybody else who's here this weekend racing, you can race, you can be side by side, and you can overtake. A little golf clap, Jeremy, from me to all the teams and drivers this weekend who have shown impeccable restraint and respect for one another. Great race.
Yeah, absolutely right. And two of the teams that finished on the podium last time out on the podium again now. Bryce Ward and Daniel Morley finished third last time out in California, and that was a tremendous performance. And that car has been fast all weekend long. Bryce did a really good job in qualifying to put that car 11th on the grid. He's not a professional driver, and he's not the youngest of spring chickens either, but he still drives like one. That was a tremendous effort he did in qualifying. Good first stint, and Daniel Morad did the rest.
Yeah, I'm very pleased for Bryce. We've watched that team develop over the last handful of years. It was a big jump up into professional racing when they came up into it. They've run a split team. They've expanded into Europe and into the DTM as well. And as I say, Bryce, for quite some time, I'm not going to drive anymore. In fact, he stepped away for a little while. He has been tempted back into the GT4 ranks, and a third and a first in the last two outings tells you all you need to know about how much that team and that man in particular, and Russell Ward, his son, will be absolutely on top of the world after that. Let's just confirm the results for you then at the end of the 100 minutes. It is Winward Racing and Mercedes-Benz AMG, the number 57 car, having completed 71 laps, that wins it from RS1 in second, Porsche, the number 28, and Mark Miller with the Thayer's competition MC Squared Mercedes. What a debut in this championship. At the end, it was the top 13 cars that were still on the lead lap, and some phenomenal times being put in at the end. Lone Star Racing's not their day, although they took the fastest lap of the race courtesy of Scott Andrews. But the day belongs to Daniel Morad and Bryce Ward. At the end of the race, they'll be swapping stories tonight. They're like a good meal and a good sit down and a good bit of chat. There's plenty of places to do that in Motortown. Jeremy, let's have a look at the championship points as we head away from this race.
Yeah, and then of course that's the first win for both of those guys. Daniel Morris only had 3 previous starts in the Michelin Pilot Challenge, all this year of course, but his first win. Bryce Ward had a couple of second positions, so finally tops up with his first win. Yeah, points. Kenny Murillo and Christian Shimjak in the number 72 car that finished 7th today. They came in the lead into this race with the championship lead and will maintain it on 1,000 points even unofficially at this stage. Into second position now, jumping from 9th in the points with a second place finish today. Stephen McAleer and Eric Frogeris will have 900 to the 890 of Robbie Foley and Vin Barletta, the 880 of Tom Collingwood and Spencer Papelli, who finished in the 8th position. So it really is very, very tight. A 100-point lead for the number 72 team, but not that much. In a manufacturers championship, remarkably, Porsche and Mercedes dominated the top 8 positions on the grid, so they will maintain their positions first and second in a manufacturer championship. 1300 now for Mercedes to the 1240 of Porsche. BMW are the third place manufacturer. They will score third place points in the manufacturer battle. They're on 1200 in third place.
Oh, that was brilliant stuff, Jeremy. Thank you very much indeed. It was perhaps an experiment, maybe, but I tell you what, sometimes those experiments pay off. What a great start to the season that we've had on the high banks of Sebring, on the bumps, high banks of Daytona, on the bumps of Sebring, and then across to the west coast and to WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. We've been waiting for somebody to repeat on the podium, and it comes today with Winward Racing, who take the victory on the streets of Motor Time. The rest of the season coming on IMSA Radio and IMSA TV, thanks to our team, John Hindorf and Jeremy Shaw, in the IMSA broadcast booth. The Global Broadcast Centre will reconvene for IMSA at the Salins 6 Hours of the Glen at the end of June. But don't forget, we're ramping up our content and our coverage of the Le Mans 24 Hours, the 100th anniversary running of that, and that starts tomorrow over on radiolemans.com and throughout the week, as well as on XM Sirius next weekend. I think that's a success, Jeremy. I didn't know what to expect from the single class racing here. I think we'll count that as a success. Well done to IMSA and everybody concerned. I think we can have another one of those. Thanks very much, don't you?
I think that was great. Yeah, I mean, last time out on the West Coast was a brilliant race. There was one caution period which unfortunately was extended, but other than that, it was a clean race and some great competition going on there. Some really respectful driving as well, and yeah, super competitive. Great results, I think, for the championship here. Great to see the Michelin Pilot Challenge here on the streets of Detroit.
And representing IMSA and the rest of the IMSA series in great style. Thank you for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your motor racing weekend, whatever you've got to do. Hopefully it'll be a good one for you. I'm John Hindorf. For Jeremy Shaw, our hard-working team at the track and at NASCAR Productions at Charlotte have done a cracking job. We'll see you next time. Sailing 6 Hours of the Glen. Bye-bye.